quick explanation of this video. There's a video really far back in my channel called something like How to Be a Misogynist in 5 Minutes or Less, and in it I say that I just filmed a video on my nice camera, but I'm gonna edit it and post it later. And then that video never actually showed up on my channel, and I was going through my hard drive the other day on the plane, and I found it. And I actually really like it. I didn't have my audio recorder yet, so the audio's a bit echoey, and I am in the dorm that I used to live in, but I think it's a really nice video. I like what I say, I like my words, my hair looks great in it, so I'm posting it here and now, so enjoy freshman year me talking about adaptations from books to films. My roommates are all playing Red Dead Redemption. Well, one roommate is playing Red Dead Redemption, the other two are watching them, hence the noise. Enjoy. This video is brought to you by Fetus Me in my college dorm.
Okay, proper vlog. Doing this like a real YouTuber. I have a camera, I have a setup, I've even got some fucking fairy lights. I'm using an actual camera. Got tea. And my roommate is gone, so I could set up a tripod. This is exciting, and if it doesn't come out well... So the book was better. No. The book was a book and the movie was a movie, or a TV show, or a movie based on a graphic novel based on 2,000-year-old historical propaganda based on a battle. Chances are the only reason you like the book more is because you read the book first. That's kind of how the human brain works. We just like the first thing better. The issues that come with adaptation are huge, but not insurmountable. Of course, the issue with all of them is that an adaptation is going to be inherently different, and since people are predisposed to like what they already know, they're probably gonna like the adaptation less. So yeah, if you read the book first, you're probably gonna like it more than the movie, which is why I, unpopular opinion time, always try to read the book after I've seen the movie. This is so I don't spend the whole movie saying, oh, they changed this, oh, this was better in the book, but rather I spend the whole book saying, oh, it's really cool that they explained that, oh, this is some really interesting backstory to this part of the movie I didn't fully understand. That is hot. Okay. However, this experience is completely negated when the adaptation is so far removed from the source material that they're hardly recognizable as being related to each other anymore. This brings me to something people tend not to consider, which is that movies, TV shows, books, etc., they're all very different mediums of storytelling, true, but they use different tools to tell those stories. And just because a story does very well in one medium doesn't mean it'll hold up in another. That doesn't mean it's a bad story, it just means it was meant to be told a certain way, not another. Example time! And boy do I have lots. I'll start a little bit more obscure. Aragon. Some of you may have seen the movie, less of you probably read that brick of a book. This is one of the instances in which I saw the movie and then I read the book. And when I saw the movie I was like, oh, this is nice. Dragons, wizards, sure. And then when I read the book, I realized that the movie had missed out so much that the film was essentially a shell of what the book was. The book had all this depth on an almost Tolkien-like level, and the movie was just an average kind of B-level fantasy film. And this is simply because the book was huge. Too much had to be cut in order to fit it into a nice, clean, 110-page screenplay that people like to have. Too much had to be cut in order for it to fit into the time allotted in a film. So how do we solve this problem? It is here that I turn your attention to The Mortal Instruments, a popular book series. So they said, hey, let's make a movie off of it. The movie didn't turn out too well, but instead of making a rushed sequel to try to patch up its mistakes, like some people, they took a step back and said, okay, there is still interest in the product, but we've done something wrong. What can we do to fix it? Television show. In the TV show Shadowhunters, they don't have to force the plot forward by just driving it on and on and on. They have time to let the characters breathe. You know, stuff that's not necessarily relevant to the main plot, but it's just kind of fun to watch. Whereas when they only had 2 hours, they just kind of had to power through every single plot point. Now, I mentioned rushed sequels. I'd be hard-pressed to find a better example of this than the infamous Percy Jackson and the Olympians debacle, in which they so royally screwed up the first film that they desperately tried to fix it in the second one. and just somehow made it worse. I didn't think it was possible for them to make it worse, but they did. And what really pisses me off is that these books, when you read them, they're half screenplay already. They lend themselves perfectly to screen. They're very visual stories. They would have been brilliant television shows. One thing Rick Riordan does well is that he doesn't waste time. There's nothing that can be easily cut from his books because every episode in their quests is either to forward the plot, foreshadow something, or develop the characters, or most often a combination of the three. So in order to cut one of those episodes from the stories, you have to undercut an entire portion of the plot, which is why this would lend itself perfectly to a TV show that could develop over time and then you could see these things build up to each other, but it just wasn't fit for a 2-hour movie. And it got worse when they tried to fix it with the second one because they just kind of crammed books 2 through 5 into the last movie and they were just kind of like, fuck all. The point is, the episodic nature of the books made them good books and would, I believe, make them a good television show. And if someone gave me the opportunity to, I would be willing to adapt them. Call me. And I think in a television show, there would be the opportunity to even possibly expand upon the source material, which in this case would be fun, but sometimes isn't a good idea. For example, if you're, say, trying to adapt a 250-page children's book into 9 hours of film. As a random, non-specific example, I'm kidding, I'm being very specific, I'm talking about The Hobbit. We all saw what happened. So I'm just gonna give you a quick rundown of the story. Basically, some dwarves come to a hobbit and they say, yo, wanna come get our gold with us? And the hobbit's like, yeah, I'm not doing anything else, sure, why not? It's a very simple story. They go on a quest, they get the gold, there's a battle. But the protagonist gets knocked out all of 5 seconds into this battle and we don't actually see it. It's not very cinematic. It's a great book, it's a fun book, but it doesn't lend itself to screen. It doesn't have that kind of visual grandeur that, say, The Lord of the Rings had. The first film did pretty well. It stayed true to the book and the characters, and the things it added kind of really helped it to be a better film. You know, the whole Dol Guldur subplot gave a reason for why Gandalf was just kind of ditching the squad every now and then. And a really good example of this is when the company was going to Rivendell. In the book, it's just Gandalf leading them by a trail of white stones, which would be really boring to watch on screen. But since the films incorporated that driving force from behind of Azog and the orcs, it became a very exciting chase sequence. That's a change that makes sense from a novel to a movie. So about midway through film 2, it became very apparent that the filmmakers had overextended themselves. They were getting tangled in their own subplots, and it felt a lot like a college student trying to reach a word count with all the fluff they were trying to stuff into these movies in order to hit the 3-hour film mark that The Lord of the Rings had left. And the fact of the matter is, The Hobbit is not as big of a story as Lord of the Rings. The Hobbit is very cut and dry. Dwarves want gold. Dragon has gold. Conflict. The Lord of the Rings was kind of about the world ending and being saved. The Hobbit just didn't have that. Or it wasn't supposed to anyway. And there's nothing the filmmakers really could have done to make it a good movie. A truly faithful adaptation would have been a boring movie. And the adaptation we got was so far removed from the source material, it can hardly be classified under the same title. Now, I want to touch briefly on something that people don't talk about much, which is the reverse. Adapting a movie into a book. Which, I mean, no one's jumping up and down to adapt a movie into a book, so it doesn't come up much, but I want to point this out just to kind of show how different the storytelling mediums are. Because film is inherently a visual medium. A lot of the drama comes from what we see, or things that the characters know that the audience doesn't. This is very hard to work in a novel because we cannot see it, the author has to describe it, and even from a limited third-person point of view, we don't quite get that same disconnect from the characters. You know, take Ex Machina, for example.
And that's where the video ends. I think the camera stopped recording and I didn't realize it, or I thought I had more, or maybe there was a whole second file that I lost at some point, you know. It is 2 years old, it's completely possible. But I do remember what my argument was. My argument was that in a film like Ex Machina, where the tension comes entirely from what we see and what we don't see, it would be completely impossible to make that work in a novel because, by virtue of the author describing it to us, we know that it's going to be important. So, just as certain things work in books but not on screen, certain things only work on screen and not in books. So it goes both ways. The only difference is, like I said, people don't often adapt movies into books, and when they do, they're never good. Not a one. So that was your message from 2 years ago me, who didn't know that I was going to be doing video. You know, started at the bottom, now we're here. I'm kidding, started at the bottom, but I brought a pickaxe and a will to dig. This video is brought to you by my pickaxe, and I'll see you tomorrow.